Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. We had a time change yesterday, so I think because of that, some might find difficult to, locate the time in all of us. So it's 8 now, 8 p.m. So please check with your time, our time, EST time. So now it's 8 p.m. So we're going to be doing our usual sutta discussion. So today is day 85. So we've been doing a lot of sutta discussion so far. So on this day, we'll be discussing a sutta called Bālapaṇḍita. But this is not the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which we see in the Majjhima Nikaya. We know in the Majjhima Nikaya, we have in this book we have Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is a longer version of Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is 129. But this is another Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is a short version, which primarily depends on avijja, ignorance, and tanha, craving, and then how do the both wise and unwise consider, and how do they understand the both in their own version. So this is what we're going to be talking today. So this is Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is Saṃyutta Nikaya, SN, you could see in the description here. I guess it's 19. So for the for the topic, I have put this one. Only a fool, bālo, repeats the same mistakes in Samsara. Okay, so Samsara is the place where we've been borning, and we've been reborning, and all these things happen in the Samsara, and the primary objective of the Buddhist teaching is to end this Samsara cycle. This is kind of a cycle. We're supposed to end this cycle. That is the main aim of the Buddhist teachings, and all the other purposes, they are secondary. So the primary purpose is to end this Samsara. That means by attaining the Nibbana. So I wanted to read the sutta first. Okay, sutta goes this way. Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is Saṃyutta Nikaya, 12.19. Savatyam. So the story happened, when the Buddha stayed in Savatthi, Jetanarama. Avijja nivaranassa bhikkhave bālassa tanhāya sampayuttassa eva mayang kāyo samudāgato. What does it mean? At Savatthi, because for the fool, Bāla, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, this body has thereby originated. Now, we've been talking this multiple times. So, we know avijja has hindered us, and tanha has fettered us to the samsara. So, we have to understand that on one side, this is avijja, which is the main cause of our samsaric journey. Even though in the Abhidhamma and some of the suttas, the Saṃyutta Nikaya, they say the primary cause, you can't single out a primary cause. It is primarily avijja, but avijja is also dependent on asavas. So avijja and asavas, they are mutually causatives of each other. So anyways, avijja, which means ignorance, has hindered us, in understanding the true nature of reality. Okay? And then because we are hindered by ignorance, tanha has fettered us to the samsara. So the reason why we are in the samsara is avijja, ignorance. Because we are hindered by avijja, tanha has fettered us to this samsara. So avijja nivaranassa, which means avijja has hindered us. Bālassa tanhaya sampayuttassa evamayan kayo samudānato. So this body has thereby originated with these two things, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Iti, now this body of every being. Iti ayang cheva kayo bahiddhacha nama rupang. Ittetang dvayang paticca passo. Salevayatanani yehi putto bālo sukha dukkhang patisangvediyati ete sangva anyatari. Now here the sutta teaches us something really interesting about nama rupa and the salayatana and then the passas. The meaning, so there is this body, an external name and form. Thus this diet, dependent on the diet there is contact, which means dependent on this body and the external name and form. We have to discuss what they are. So this body and the external name and rupa, thus this diet. So when we go into the commentary, we have to find out the meaning. Ayang cheva kayoti, right? What does it mean? Ayang chassa attano saviññānako kayo. That means our individual bodies, which have consciousness, in it or in them. Ayang cheva kayoti means ayang chassa attano saviññānako kayo. So individual bodies of every human being. And then what is the external part of that? Bahiddhacha namrupan. Bahiddhacha paresang saviññānako kayo. Which means, now if I take myself, now for myself, this is my body which has a consciousness. Now if I look at others, now look at you who are listening to this discussion, and your bodies appear to me as bahiddha namrupa, which means external bodies which have consciousness with them. So that is what we have to understand by. So there is this body and external name and form. So body is oneself, the body of oneself, individual bodies, and external name and form mean bodies of other people who you are trying to look at. And this diet, dependent on the diet, means my personal body, at the same time body of somebody else. So this diet, dependent on the diet, there is contact, right? So there is contact. There are just 6 sense bases which are called by salevayatana, which means center of eye, center of ear, center of nose, center of tongue, center of body, center of the mind, right? So eye is a center, ear is a center, nose is a center, tongue is a center, body is a center, and the mind is a center. There are just 6 sense bases. Sense bases, contacted through which or through a certain one among them, the fool experiences pleasure and pain. Now the problem that arises at this point is, who is a fool in this sutta? Now, fool has a multiple meaning in the Buddhist teachings. If you go to Mahamangala Sutta, you can see in the Mahamangala Sutta, Buddha talks about asevanacha bālanam panditanaja sevana. Now in that context, bāla seems to be somebody who is not wise, but in the context of this normal understanding, where we can find in the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta in the Majjhima Nikāya 129. There I will read that sutta for you, a little bit about the definition about a normal fool and a normal wise person. Bhikkhus, there are these 3 characteristics of a fool, bāla, signs of a fool, attributes of a fool. What 3? Number 1. Here a fool is one who thinks bad thoughts. So the first characteristic of a fool is fool always thinks bad thoughts. What are the bad thoughts? Abhicca, vyapada, micchaditti, which means being covetous, and then having thoughts of destroying other people, and then having micchaditti, wrong view. So that is the first characteristic of a fool. Second, fool always speaks bad words. This is the second characteristic where you can understand a fool, which means fool always speaks, false word. I would say lies. Always, talks behind the back, and then third, always talks, hurtful words, and then being an idle chatter, become an idle chatter or a gossiper. So the fool always executes these 4 bad type of speeches. And the third characteristic where you can understand a fool is a fool always executes bad deeds, which means she always tries to kill other beings, and try to take what's not given, and try to misbehave. So this is the fundamental easy way to understand a bāla or a fool, and the opposite is a pandita. So I understand now the fool and the wise person, or the wise person or the unwise person that we find out in the Mahamangala Sutta is this definition. So Buddha asks us not to resort to the company of the bālas, fools, and try to be in the company of the wise individuals who always thinks good thoughts, who always speaks good words, who always executes good actions. Okay, so that's a fundamental definition. But who is a bāla in this context? I mean, in the context of the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which is not in the Majjhima Nikāya, but in the Saṃyutta Nikāya 1219. Let's take a look. If we take a look at the commentary, Sarata Pakhasini, we can see the commentary goes this way. Sabbopi sapati sandiko putujjano bāloti. Every being who has not stopped rebirth. Every being who has not stopped rebirth is a bāla. Now we all are bāla in that context. That's a kind of a good definition, right? So, on that higher note, I would like to emphasize that if you haven't attained Nibbana, which means you are a bāla in this context, in this sutta's context. And who is a pandita? Appatisandiko kīnāsavu panditoti. Those who have eradicated defilements, those who have stopped the samsara, they are the pandita. So in this context, the definition of a bāla and a pandita seem to be very deeper than that normal definition that we can see in the Mahamangala Sutta and the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now we understand who is a bāla, who is a pandita, according to this context, and also with reference to other contexts too. So now the bāla in this context, which means a person who has not stopped the samsara, she experiences pleasure and pain through the context that we just talked about. I mean, the context is that they are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, and because of that this body continues, and then there is what you call the internal body, of each individual, and then the bodies of other people. And because of this amalgamation, diet, there is contact. Contact means, it's pretty clear, it is called passa, right? Contact means passa, because of these individual bodies and the bodies of other individuals. This diet makes up contact, passa. Let's take a look at how it was given. Attano cha parassa cha panchahi khandehi chahi ayatanehi chapi ayang attu deepe tapu. So it's it's the definition of what you call 5 aggregates and 6 centers of both individuals and the other individuals. So that is what we call ayang cheva kayo and bahiddhacha nama rupa. So the amalgamation, so this diet, what is this diet? Anyatta chakku rupadi ni dvayani paticca chakku sampassadayo butto. That means, now when this diet interact each other, then what happens? There is this contact. There are 6 main contacts which called chakku sampassa, right? Sota sampassa, ghana sampassa, jivha sampassa, kaya sampassa, and then Dhamma sampassa, right? So basically, because of the what you call faculties and the objects of each individual and the individuals apart from those bodies, because of that diet, what happens? There arises 6 type of contact, starting from chakku sampassa, sota sampassa, ghana sampassa. Chakku sampassa means eye contact. Sota sampassa means ear contact. Ghana sampassa means what you call what's the easy way to say that? Those different kind of nose contact. And then jivha sampassa means tongue contact, and kaya sampassa means body contact, and then mano sampassa means mind contact, right? So this is how we have to take the 6 types of contact which appear, which arise because of the diet, individual bodies and the external bodies. Okay, now in short, what we have to understand is that how does a bāla, an unwise person, looks at individual bodies and the bodies of other people, in a context where he or she is hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving. Okay, and then moving on to the next part, where we find out how does a wise person experiences all this. Avijja nivaranassa bhikkave panditassa tanhaya sampayuttassa evamayang kayo samudagato iti ayang cheva kayo bahiddha cha nama rupang ittetang dvayang paticca passo salevayatanani yehi putto pandito sukha dukkhaṃ patisangvediyati ete sangva anyatarena. Same thing. There is no difference. I would read for you. Because for the wise man, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, this body has thereby originated. So there is this body, an external name and form. Thus, this diet, dependent on the diet, there is contact. There are just 6 sense bases contacted through which or through a certain one among them the wise man experiences pleasure and pain. What bhikkhus is the distinction. Okay, now this is the place where we are now aiming at, looking at. Tatrahi bhikkhave ko viseso ko adippayo King Nana Karanam Panditasa Balinadi. Now, somebody may question, now what's the difference between a wise person and an unwise person in this particular context of avijja and tanha? Okay, this is what we find out here by what bhikkhus is the distinction here, what is the disparity, what is the difference between the wise man and the fool. And then now the Buddha questions monks about it, and the monks replied to him, the Buddha, this way: Bhagavam Molaka anu bhante Dhamma, Bhagavan Nittika, Bhagavan Paṭisarana, Sadhuvata bhante Bhagavan Tanneva Patibhatu, Etassa Bhasitassa Atto, Bhagavato Sutta Bhikkhu Dari Santeti, Tenahi Bhikkave Sunata, Sadhukam Manasikarota Bhasissamiti. Evam bhante di kote bhikkhu bhagavatu pachassusum bhagavai taduri. Now, the monks were trying to credit the Buddha, saying that we don't know, you are the perfect one to let us know what the difference is between the wise person and the unwise person when it comes to tanha and avijja. We'll take a look at the English translation as well. Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One. Take recourse in the Blessed One. It would be good if the Blessed One would clear up the meaning of the statement, the difference, the disparity between a wise person and an unwise person with regard to tanha and avijja. Having heard it from him, the bhikkhus will remember it. They listen and attend closely because I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir. The bhikkhus replied, the Blessed One said this. Okay, now listen carefully. This is the difference. Yayacha bhikkave avijjaya nibutassa bālassa yayacha tanhaya sampayuttassa ayam kāyo samudāgato. Sācheva avijja bālassa appahena sācha tanha aparikkena. Now this is the reason. So the reason is bhikkhus, monks, for the fool, bāla, hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, this body has originated. For the fool, that ignorance has not been abandoned and that craving has not been utterly destroyed. Now, the main difference between a wise person and an unwise person, bāla and pandita, is when it comes to a bāla, unwise person, his or her ignorance hasn't been abandoned. Still there. And the craving has not been utterly destroyed. Now, Dhamma friends, we are talking about living individuals. I mean, when it comes to a wise person who already attained Nibbana, even that Arahant still lives until the death. So, until he or she, I mean Arahant, male or female Arahant, passes away, that particular Arahant or those Arahants, they have to maintain the body. They have to bear the body, which means this body is made of from this, what you call the root cause called avijja and tanha. So though they keep the bodies until they die, but ultimately they have realistically they have entered their samsara, so they don't have any avijja, they don't have any craving. But when it comes to a bāla, unwise person, even though you see that the both are living, wise persons and unwise persons, they both are living at different places, but their avijja, their craving have not been abandoned, have not been destroyed, right? So the particular word which makes the difference between a wise person and an unwise person is, when it comes to an unwise person, his or her ignorance of why samsara is there. So this, because of this ignorance and because of the craving, he or she make a big difference compared to a wise person. So ignorance of fool has not been abandoned, as well as the craving has not been utterly destroyed. So that's the main reason. For what reason? Buddha questions. For what tankisa hetu? Nahi bhikkave bālo acari brahmacharya samma dukkakkayaya tasma bālo kāyassa bheda kāyupago hoti. So kāyupago samano na parimucchati. Jātiya jara marnena sokehi paridevehi dukkhehi domanassehi upayasehi na parimucchati dukkasmati vadami. Now, Buddha also mentions why an unwise person is unable to abandon ignorance called avijja, as well as why he hasn't been able to destroy craving. This is the reason. The reason is because the fool hasn't lived the holy life for the complete destruction of suffering. Now the interesting thing here is that we are supposed to spend a holy life. I mean, when it comes to a monk or a nun, even the lay people, they are supposed to have a holy life. Holy life doesn't mean that they are, involving with their lay activities. But if they are only keeping to those activities, if they are not misbehaving, then you are sort of spending a very good life, holy life. So when it comes to the monastics, it is basically the holy life, because we need a holy life to, destroy this dukkha. If we haven't lived a holy life, we will not be able to destroy dukkha, right? So that's the main reason. That's why this wise person cannot, unwise person Bāla cannot destroy tanha and abandon avijja. Okay. And what happens next? Because the unwise person cannot abandon avijja and destroy tanha, then this happens to him or her. Tasma bālo kāyassa bheda kāyupago hoti. So kāyupago samano na parimucchati. Jātiya jara maranena sokehi paridevehi dukkhehi domanassehi upayasehi na parimucchati dukkasmati vadami. Now, because he or she, on the side of an unwise person, has not abandoned avijja, ignorance, and destroyed craving, then what will happen? After the dissolution of the body, breakup of the body, the fool fares onto another body. That means samsara is still there for that person. Faring onto another body, he or she is not freed from birth, aging, and death. Not freed from sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, despair, not freed from suffering, dukkha. So now you understand why an unwise person is unable to, abandon avijja, called ignorance, and destroy tanha, because this unwise person has not been able to practice a holy life to end the suffering. Because our main primary goal, regardless of lay people and monks, monastics, is to end the samsara. So end the samsara means to understand the true nature of the dissatisfaction, dukkha. Let's take a look at the opposite of what you call by how do the wise individuals make a difference from the unwise individuals. Yāya ca bhikkave avijjāya niyutassa paṇḍitassa yāya ca tanhāya sampayuktassa ayam kāyo samudāgato sāceva avijjā paṇḍitassa pahina sāca tanha parikkena. Now you can find out the meanings right away. Avijjā paṇḍitassa pahina, which means ignorance. Ignorance of samsara. I would say the wise individual has abandoned avijja. That is what we have understand by avijja paṇḍitassa pahina. So also, tanha parikkena, craving is already destroyed. Tankissa hetu, achari bhikkave pandito brahmacharyang samma dukkakkayaya. Tasma pandito kayasa bheda na kayupago. So akayupago samano parimuchyati. Jatiya jara maranena soke paridevehi dukkehi domanasehi upayasehi parimuchyati dukkasmati vadam. Because wise individuals have abandoned avijja, because avijja is what hindered all of us already. But wise individuals, those arhants, they have abandoned avijja, and also they have destroyed tanha, so that they wouldn't be facing any more elements of the samsara, such as jati, jara, marana, and so on and so forth. I mean, birth, decay, sicknesses, and so on and so forth. So that is the main difference between a wise person and an unwise person, according to Samyutta Nikaya 12.19 sutta called Bālapaṇḍita Sutta. So basically, here what we have to understand is Bāla in this sutta means everyone who has not attained Nibbana. They all are Bāla. So we all are Bāla if you haven't attained Nibbana. The rest who already have attained Nibbana, they are called Panditas. But this is not the normal definition of Bāla, which we see in the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, Sevitabba Sutta Majjhima Nikaya, as well as Mangala Sutta, which you already know, this normal definition of Bāla. Okay, so now I will be looking at a few other things. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at is Samsara. I think I have discussed Samsara a couple times in my previous discussions. Before I jump into Samsara, I also want to ask you to watch one video I have mentioned in the description of the post. I already given a sutta discussion back in 2018 about Bālapaṇḍita Sutta, which you can see in the link of the post. So please check that also to get a good sense of what the Bālapaṇḍita mean in the normal context. And then you can take a look at this particular sutta about the difference between Bāla and Pandita on a high spiritual, deep spiritual context. Okay, what is Samsara? Now Samsara, according to what we understand from many teachings, Samsara is an ocean. In other ways, Samsara is a circle. Okay, so the Buddha's teachings, not even the Buddha's teachings, but also the teachings of Hinduism, post-Upanishadism, and other Hindu teachings, they all talk about Samsara. They all talk about the liberation from Samsara is the Nibbana or whatever their goal. But when it comes to Buddhist teachings, Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, the Buddhism has their own way of interpreting Samsara. Okay, now basically we understand karma is the main source which drives us in the Samsara. Because of karma, we are propelled to be reborn. We are driven to be reborn in the Samsara. But what is karma in the context of a bigger meaning? Karma, includes in the sankhara. We talked about sankhara in the last discussion. So all the karmas go under sankhara. So there are punyabhi sankharas, apunyabhi sankharas, and aninjabhi sankharas. Punyabhi sankhara means all the good things you've been doing so far. Apunyabhi sankhara means all the bad things you've been doing so far. Aninjabhi sankharas means all the activities which have been doing by beings in the Brahma worlds, right? So basically, these sankharas, which have come to be the contents of them, they are what drive us in the Samsara. Buddha also says that why we are in the Samsara, because we are ignorant about the true reality of the life. Basically speaking, generally speaking, I would say the Four Noble Truths. Okay? That's why we are driven in the Samsara. So until we understand the Four Noble Truths in 12 ways, we call it Dwadasakara, and 3 ways called Tiparivatta. So you have to understand the Four Noble Truths in both 3 ways as well as 12 ways. How do we need to understand these two, what you call components of the Four Noble Truths? So in the Dhamma Sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya, it says that each truth has Tiparivatta. That means each truth has to be understood according to 3 ways: Satchanyana, Kichanyana, and Katanyana. So Satchanyana basically means one has to understand the literal level of that truth, and this could be applying one's own experiences about the particular truth. Now when it comes to the first truth, let's say Buddha says birth is dukkha, sickness is dukkha, aging is dukkha, death is dukkha, grasping to five aggregates is dukkha, what you expect is not always favorable, and it is also dukkha. All this is dukkha. So Satchanyana, which means the first part of each truth, which comes under Tiparivatta, helps us to apply our personal experience suffering into the literal truth that we know in the particular truth. Let's say if you take the first truth, that is application of your personal suffering or dissatisfaction, dukkha, into those definitions. And the second called Kicha means you need to understand what needs to be done in order to understand this particular truth. Sometimes I think more often you understand that this is my personal experience, this is what I had to understand from the sutta, but you never try to think about what I should do to understand it. That is called Kicha. And Kata means this is kind of a place where you completely understand that particular truth. That means you are already attained Nibbana, right? So the Kata Jnana is a level where an Arahant proclaims that I already understood this particular truth. So in that way, Satcha, Kitcha, Kata, they all apply to each truth. So then that means this is what you call Tiparivatta, threefold classification. And when this threefold classification applies to all the truths, then it will become 12, which you call Dwadasakara. So the main reason why we are in the Samsara is the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths with the 3 classification as well as the 12 classifications. We have to understand these 2 classifications to understand the Four Noble Truths, to liberate us from the hindering avijja. Now, it is also interesting to understand the Samsara. Now, Samsara, if Samsara is a wheel, then there are 5 main spokes of this wheel. Okay, so there is a radius, and then there are 5 spokes. So the first spoke is hells, called Nirayas, 8 hot hells and 8 cold hells. The second spoke I suggest you understand is the Peta world, which is called hungry ghost. There are 4 categories of the Peta world: Nijjamatanhika, Kuppipasa, Paratupajivi, and Pansapisacha, right? And then the third spoke is animal kingdom, which is called Tirachana world. And the 4th spoke is humans. And the 5th spoke is the deities, gods. But in some other traditions, they also add another spoke, which is the sixth spoke. They are the demigods called asuras, called demons sometimes, right? So they are very powerful beings who were supposed to live with the deities in the Tavatins, but when they were drunk with a lot of gandapanas, the goat sucker, they chased them to the bottom of the Mount Sumeru. So anyways, so there are 6 spokes of this Samsara wheel, which we will be reborn in one of the spokes if we don't attain Nibbana. So that is Samsara. Now I also want to talk about avijja. Now avijja is very interesting. Now there are a lot of discussions going on avijja. Now basically we know ignorance or misunderstanding of the true nature of the reality is avijja, right? That is avijja. Now if we further go into a definition of the Tripitaka or canonical text, we understand it is the ignorance or it is the misunderstanding. Actually, it is a misunderstanding of the Four Noble Truths. If we understand the Four Noble Truths with Tiparivatta and Dwadasakara, we already attained Nibbana and we already cleared avijja. But we don't understand the true Four Noble Truths, but we only misunderstand these 4 in our own way. Now, if we little bit study about avidya, we find out there are different understandings about the definition of avijja. Now, to my understanding, avijja is not lack of information, right? So we all know avijja is ignorance, but that's why I think it is not lack of information, but it's a mere deep-seated misperception of reality. So it's kind of a deep misperception of the reality. Now, let's say I see the Buddha statue behind me. Even I see the Buddha statue, but I don't go to a level of looking at the particular Buddha statue behind me with a deep perception of a reality, because we all have misperceptions, kind of deep-seated misperceptions of reality. That is what we call avijja. Now, that's why when it comes to people who understand the Dhamma, they are given as four, right? Uggaditangya, Vipachitangya, Neya, Padaparamas, right? So, the level of understanding will not occur to each group in the same way, right? So that's why this definition of avidya is very simple, which means avidya is not lack of information. Avijja is a deep-seated misperception of a true reality. And also, it's kind of a positive misconception. This is another, definition, kind of a positive misconception. So sometimes people are, misperceiving, understanding, concepts. So although they could be positive, but when it comes to kind of a samsaric thing like avijja, it is not true. Also, we have observed some of the scholars, and especially Alex Wayman. I know his books are really interesting. He considers the translation for avijja, which is ignorance, seems to be not inclusive. So he suggests the better word for avijja is unwisdom. So wisdom is panya, and avijja is what you call unwisdom. So that's a new way of looking at it. Anyways, we know avijja basically means ignorance or misunderstanding of the true nature of reality, which means the Four Noble Truths. And if you take a closer look at the suttas about the definition of avijja, we know it is the non-knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. But if you take a look at Abhidhamma, in addition to the non-knowledge of the Four Noble Truths, there is something else, which is the non-knowledge of one's past prenatal lives and post-mortem future lives of dependent arising. So we never know about our past lives, we never know about our future lives. So we think we exist now, right? So this misperception Because if we understand this, the 6 spokes where we were born before and we will be born in the future, we have a better idea of what harm does avijja impart to us in our life. So Abhidhamma adds that understanding in addition to the non-knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. That is avijja. And one other thing I want to touch before I close this discussion, it is tanha. Now we talked about what is samsara, what is avijja. Now we will be talking about what is tanha. Now tanha has 2 definitions in the Paṭisamuppada as well as in the Four Noble Truths. Now, what is the definition of craving in the in the Paṭisamuppada, dependent origination? So when you know avijja paccaya saṅkhāra, saṅkhāra paccaya viññānaṁ, viññāna paccaya nāmarūpaṁ, nāmarūpa paccaya salayatanaṁ, salayatana paccaya passu, passa paccaya vedana, vedana paccaya tanha. So that tanha, which comes as as a consequence of as a dependability, as a dependent cause of vedana, is not kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. That tanha means rupa tanha, saddha tanha, gandha tanha, rasa tanha, pottabha tanha, and dhamma tanha. So that means craving about images of sight, craving about sounds, craving about smell, craving about taste, craving about contact, craving about thoughts. So craving that we know in the Paṭisamuppada is none other than these 6 types of craving of the objects of the sense faculties. But when it comes to the craving with regard to the Four Noble Truths, it's different. We call them yāyaṁ tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra abhinandini sayyadidam kama tanha bhava tanha vibhava tanha. Now that interpretation is the highest in our understanding, which means there are 3 types of craving, which means craving for sensual pleasures, kama tanha. Bhava tanha means craving for becoming, to be born in future lives. Vibhava tanha means craving of not becoming. Now, what we understand in the Four Noble Truth as tanha is the larger version or the bigger version of the tanha in the Paṭisamuppada. So, in addition to that, I want to say there is a stanza in the Dhammapada which is 339, because Dhammapada has a whole chapter on tanha, right? Craving. In this chapter, there is a stanza about tanha where we have to understand tanha as 36-fold. So there is a 36-fold tanha classification in this stanza. How do we understand it? So chakku, sota, gana, jivha, kaya, mana has each kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So chakku, which means eyes have kama tanha, bhava tanha. Yes. Now, for example, I would say, if I see a favorable, pleasant image or sight, then what happened? I might use that sight to crave for a sensual thing. So then that means just with I can crave for a sensual thing, which means I can create my kama tanha. Also, I can also create bhava tanha with my eyes. Let's say because of that seeing, I might think about something like, okay, may I be reborn again to enjoy these pleasurable, pleasant things, right? So I'm creating my bhava tanha as well with my mere eyes. Also, because of my eyes, something that I see, I can also construct my vibhava tanha, craving of not becoming. Sometimes I might, if I'm not into samadhi, I might think, for those beings who are not in samadhi, oh, this pleasant thing is there, and I am only living for this life and I won't be reborn again. I want to enjoy. So, which means for each sense faculty, you can construct kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So, in that way, there are 18 types of tanha for only your sense faculties. If you take sota, that means your ears. Ears also have kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. And then nose, tongue, body, and the mind. They all have kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha individually. Not even these 18, but also the objects of the sense faculties also have kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha for each. For example, the images, the sight that we see, the sounds we hear, the smell we smell, and the taste we taste, and the contact we feel, and then the thoughts we have. They all have kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha in each. For example, I would say let's take Dhamma, what do you call the object called Dhamma, which means the thoughts. So how come do the thoughts construct kama tanha? Okay, let's say I like this kind of a thought which has an emphasis about sensual pleasure, which means there is kama tanha. What about the object called thoughts construct bhava tanha? What about my thoughts that I have now, or somebody's thoughts that they have now, construct another bunch of thoughts of becoming again in this samsara. So, which means the object called thoughts also can construct bhava tanha. So also vibhava tanha. Some thoughts that you may be having so far can construct of not becoming, which means each object has kama tanha, bhava tanha, vibhava tanha. So in that way, even only for the objects there are 18, because 3 multiplied by 6, there are 18 cravings. So there are 18 cravings for the sense faculties, 18 cravings for the objects. So there are 36 types of craving, which means chatting sati sota, 36 streams of craving. This is Dhammapada, stanza number 339. In another sutta we can see Tasinaya Purakkata Paja Parisappanti Sasova Bādito Sangyojana Sangasatta Dukkha Mupenti Punapunang Chiraya. Now in this stanza, the Buddha says Tasinaya Purakkata Paja. So we all are surrounded by craving, not even that. Sangyojana Sangasatta, right? So we are fettered by 10 fetters, and we are bonded by 7 bonds. What are they? Tanha, even there we can see craving, tanha. Mana, conceit. Ditti is views. Koda means anger. Avijja means ignorance. Kilesa means defilements. Duccharita means, non-virtue, right? So now you can understand tanha is basically a fetter which fettered us into samsara. But the reason why, the main cause of why we are in the samsara is avijja. Because we are hindered by avijja, then tanha is there to take us out. So if you work towards the elimination of avijja, then you won't be bothered by craving anymore. So that's something interesting. Let me see if I miss out on something in my discussion. Okay, so now the Buddhist teachings always talk about that samsara is a very risky, dangerous journey. So what we have to do is we have to find out the death-free place, that is Nibbana. Now we are subject to the death one day, but there is a super place called Samambonam in Buddhism called Nibbana, which is a death-free place. That is the happiness that we all need to attain, right? So that is what we have to understand by ignorance and craving, according to this teaching. So in short, I can recap what I've been talking today. We talked about basic definitions of wise people and unwise people, and we also talked about this particular sutta specific definition of interpretation of wise person and unwise person from the Bālapaṇḍita Sutta in the Saṃsāra Nikaya 12.19. And both the wise person and the unwise person experience pain and pleasure, but there is a big difference between those two. The main difference is unwise person will continue to experience pain and pleasure, but the wise person will not be so, because wise person already abandoned ignorance and destroyed craving. Any questions? You may write your questions as the post. Okay, looks like there are no more questions. So we'll close this sutta discussion from now. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways by listening to and discussing a sutta discussion be helpful, to attain the good course called Nibbana. The main expectation of us to attain Nibbana. But before that, may all the good karmas be shared by all the departed individuals who passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idammi ñāti nang huntu sukhita huntu ñātayo. Idammi ñāti nang huntu sukhita huntu ñātayo. Idammi ñāti nang huntu sukhita huntu ñātayo. We also need to share good karmas with the deities, the Nagas. May all the deities and the Nagas, Devas and Nagas share in all these good karmas. May they be happy and peaceful. May they also attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ittavatacha ammehi samvitang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabbe satta anumodantu sabbe sampatti sindhya akasattha ch bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanang chirang rakhantu desanang chirang rakhantu mang paranti. Finally, let's make a great wish. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be helpful for all of us to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm going to be blessing you a couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silis nichang vadha prachayino chattaro dhamma vadhanti ayuvannu sukhang balang ayurarogya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminati saminjatu. Thank you. Have a good evening and have a good day, all of you. Stay safe.